Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' base capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening. Well, that was random. Exceptional Radio. Good afternoon. We're at God, how many days of COVID is this? We're at year 1 and some days, and we've got 510,000 deaths as accounted for on world meters. So that's up like 250 from yesterday, and that sucks. That's just in the United States. There's like 2.5 million people, or 2.475 million people who are dead worldwide, and 20% of them are in the United States. Like, what the fuck? And that's all I got for doom and gloom. Recently, I made a beef and vegetable soup, the kind that you might associate with a can, and it turned out really, really good. And I think that the key ingredient is actually Worcestershire sauce. And I want to talk about Worcestershire sauce because it looks like Worcestershire. Like, Worcestershire is somehow pronounced Worcestershire. It's a mouthful of marble words. And I'm not really complaining because I have a lot of fun saying it, obviously. But Worcestershire. It has anchovies in it.
The pronunciation is rooted in some idiocy in that this is one of the reasons I hate English and other like Western languages because they do dumb shit like spell it Worcestershire, then pronounce it Worcester or something stupid like it's Worcester. We're Worcestershire. What you know?
You have to press your tongue up into the roof of your mouth and like so it fills out the gap in between all of your teeth. Worcestershire sauce.
Right. Yeah, you pronounce it as if you have a mouthful of food.
Now I don't even know how to pronounce it anymore.
Yeah, there's some video. I mean, there's a few videos, obviously, but when you hear how it's pronounced, it's so easy to forget because it doesn't correlate anything with how it's spelled. It's just like somebody took some sounds and some letters and were like, these two things are supposed to go together, and they have no connection whatsoever.
So it's like one of those old English words that just somehow managed to escape all audit and survived.
I would love to see like an fMRI of somebody pronouncing this sauce's name versus more intuitively spelled, phonetically spelled English words.
Oh, like setting
also,
up a...
Also somebody, maybe even somebody who has English as a second language, like, you know, what would be the baseline activation?
Oh, it's like when Jimmy Kimmel sends his street team out to ask people questions. You walk up to someone and say, "Hey, pronounce this word," and results. Easily repeatable. Then you take that on the road so that you can get people from different regions for different dialects and different countries for people who speak English as a second language. There's something there. There's a documentary that's waiting to be made.
Looking at the ingredients for now I can't even say it.
Worcestershire
sauce.
Yeah, it's got anchovies in it, like real Worcestershire sauce does. It's aged.
Worcestershire.
It's like vinegar and anchovies and some other stuff, and aged for fucking ever.
Feels like I have like cotton balls in my mouth.
Trying to say it.
Like, how many words in English sound like somebody's literally trying to impede themselves talking while they're saying the word?
I mean, Welsh language itself.
I mean, it's from England, Worcestershire. Like they, the word is like it's a shire, right? Like unless
Yeah,
they don't call
Worcestershire. It's from
right.
Worcester,
It's
England.
sure. Imagine Lord of the Rings where they're like, I'm going back to the shore. It's like trailer park version of Lord of the Rings. Back at the shore.
Trailer park hobbits.
You know, maybe a modern interpretation of Lord of the Rings is called for. It'd be like Trailer Park Boys in England. There could be Rude
Like
Boys,
the
and
Shire. The Shire is a mobile home park or community.
it's a caravan park,
It's a caravan park.
and then there could be soccer hooligans as the Orcai, and uh,
What's Mordor?
oh, France.
France is Mordor.
Well, they've got the burning chapel, right? I mean, I know it's not on fire anymore, but Notre Dame was on fire for a while. It all kind of works, right? We can make this work.
Who are the elves?
Probably the Irish, maybe the Scots. I don't know. It's a good question. The dwarves would be the Germans.
Very industrial.
No, I think that's too difficult. It stops being amusing and starts being like a really probably a very ill-timed like sociological discovery. It's been a while since I've watched those movies too. I think The Hobbit killed it all for me. It was just too long. Like the whole thing was too long. It was too long before the director's cut came out and had like an extra whatever hour per movie. I'm glad they made that stuff though, because it was really, I mean, visually it's really pretty, but like even the first,
Yeah, a unique period in history where I think it'd be difficult for them to make those. I mean, beyond just the fucking like cost and like the logistics of the pandemic, I don't know if it would be possible to make that scale of epic film that's not a comic book movie and have it work out over, you know, I don't know, I guess cuz like it seems like there's a ton of those types of things, but in reality there's only one um you know, Hunger Games. There's only one Twilight. There's only one. You know, there's a bunch of clones, but they didn't actually all become as successful.
yeah,
So it's not as if people made it out as if there's like a ton of blockbuster genre films in the same young teen vampire as Twilight, but there wasn't. There was just Twilight. And people hated, like, if you weren't a Twilight fan, they hated it because it was something that was successful and wasn't for them. So they were like, "Oh, fuck all these vampire teen movies." And it's like, well, there was just really one really successful one.
Yeah, I can only think of a few like dystopian teen savior movies that were based off of books.
Ender's Game,
Oh, yeah.
um,
I,
Logan's Run. I
oh,
don't
I'm
think they
thinking of
did.
more recently, like
No, they did an Ender's Game recently, is
no,
what
I
I'm
know,
saying.
but but really recently they finished up. So was it Maze Runner? That was within the last few years. They finished that. They made like three movies of that, I think, and then let's see, that whole Divergent trilogy that wrapped up pretty. Man, that movie was pretty stupid. Actually, I couldn't. I had a hard time believing any of it. I mean, and like in that, I'm willing to suspend disbelief. I still watch cartoons, but that whole trilogy was like miss for me. But all those movies felt
I mean,
they all felt derivative of Hunger
for us,
Games.
it's not for us.
Yeah, I know.
Hunger Games is derivative of um, what's it called? That oh, fuck, I can't think of the name of the
Battle
movie.
Royale.
Battle Royale, yeah.
Battle
So it's like
Royale was vicious.
one of that, but for teenagers. So yeah, it's like Battle Royales for adults, Hunger Games for teens.
Yeah.
That's the way it works. Hunger Games isn't for us. And adults that get mad at shit like that are pretty absurd. It's kind of funny when adults like don't let kids have their things and their own media and shit.
Like the people who pumped and dumped the Pokemon Happy Meals.
Yeah, man, that's a perfect example because then it's like, yeah, kids can't just have Pokemon shit because then these dumbass adults come along and ruin it.
Fuck, they can't even have Happy Meals.
Yeah, they
They
basically they
buy
were
out all the
buying
Happy
up Happy Meals by the dozens.
and then just disposing of them, not even giving away the
Yeah,
food.
throwing the food away. Disgusting. Disgusting people.
Over Pokemon cards. You know,
Yes.
the part that gets me is that there were like unopened boxes, like the boxes that McDonald's would have received from McDonald's Central Dispatch or whatever. They were appearing on fucking eBay, which means that some employee of a McDonald's somewhere was stealing a carton of fucking Pokemon cards. That's like
That
going.
always happens during those promos
I
because
know,
it's
but
like,
it's like going beyond just buying it all up like a jerk. That's like an asshole level move.
I mean, because they don't get paid enough not to do it.
Yeah,
That's
that's
why
true.
it's 100% the byproduct of this system where nobody's actually getting paid enough to be loyal. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, of course, some fucking worker is gonna exploit that shit and sell them, and then not ever show up to work again, and then they'll try to figure out what the fuck happened, and then finally put it together.
Has anybody
But
seen
it's
Terry?
like,
Nope.
yeah, right.
Stop running out the back door with a couple of boxes on his shoulder.
But yeah, it's like, that shit always happens when it like they did those Monopoly promos or
Oh yeah. Well,
anything
I
remotely.
there was actually a like a documentary about one of those Monopoly promos where one of the managers had created like a ring of participants of like family members who would come and pick up the various stickers. It was like they did this for years. Like they stole money from McDonald's like on the order of millions of dollars.
Mhm.
That shit's crazy. And that
Yep.
I mean that's just like a really advanced version of a Monopoly sticker theft. Yeah, it sounds so funny like, or so silly. Like
Mhm.
Monopoly, McDonald's Monopoly game grifting. It's like art imitates life. No, no, life imitates art. Imitating life.
Grifting at friends and family's prices.
Your value meal grift.
Value meal grift.
99-cent grift menu. That's
Happened with the Beanie Babies too. Like people, adults getting divorced for whatever irreconcilable differences. And I know that there was a meme circulating showing
Fighting
in the
over Beanie
courtroom
Baby.
two people dividing their Beanie Babies between them during the divorce proceedings in the courtroom.
Wait.
Those Princess Diana Beanie Babies
Oh,
Didn't even know that
wow.
existed.
are like, it's so funny because they were valuable for a while. They were super valuable for a while, but now, you know, the problem with artificial rarity is there is when there's a rush to create things to be rare, then there's a surplus. So then you have all these Beanie Babies on eBay to the point where one has two bids for $1.05, and then one has a bid for $1,000, which is probably fake, and they're probably trying to up their own price to get somebody to bite on it. But then there's all these other of the same Beanie Baby, $1, $2. It's the same thing because they made so many of these actual things, and then the people who bought them all bought them to collect them. That then 30, or I guess 25 years later rolls around, and it's like, or 24 now, and they're all on eBay. Nobody actually cared about Princess Diana. They all just wanted to make money off of her death being exploited by this company. So then there's like 757 Princess Diana Beanie Babies up on eBay when they probably only made like 1,000 of them in the first. Who knows? But it's like, oh, this rare Beanie Baby is gonna be worth money in the future, but we're gonna pretend we're making it because you want to show that you care about Princess Diana, and you're sad about her death. So you bought this little purple bear to express your feelings, and
You
and
know,
now you want to sell it to make up the if you can't get enough is the sentimental value. You're gonna have to keep it for the sentimental value, and maybe one day somebody will recognize the true value in this Beanie Baby, and then they'll buy it for $7,000 like you
you know,
want.
it's unfortunate when somebody dies, but I never really understood like why people got really upset. She died. She was a human being. It sucks, but there's giant outcry, and the same thing with like athletes or musicians. People get really upset about this when some musician dies because car accident or drink too much or do too many drugs or athlete falls out of the sky in a helicopter, and that's unfortunate shit. But musicians fall out of the sky in helicopters too, so it's like people get really upset. I just don't understand it. I guess it's just one of those things. Like, okay, they died. That sucks. Commemorative coin, commemorative Beanie Baby. That's
Man, there's
that just
like,
seems inhumane, like or inhuman. That's the capitalist machine trying to make money off the sadness. That's it, right?
there's over 300,000 Beanie Babies on eBay. And I'm trying to figure out how many they made in the first place. Because then you look at all these that are listed. It's like, man, is the whole supply of Beanie Babies on eBay now? Everybody bought them just to fucking try to sell them in the future.
Yes. Short answer. I mean, I saw Magic the Gathering cards show up on Antiques Roadshow.
What?
Oh my god.
Yeah, there was a whole collection of them that showed up on Antiques Roadshow, and there was a 9 of them that were like super rare, high like considered commodities basically, and they were just like stupid valuable according
Almost
to this appraiser.
900,000 listings on eBay for Magic the Gathering stuff.
And an episode from within the past 5 years or so.
$4 for 4 cards. Playmat, $85. One card, $266. 15 cards? No, 103 cards. Foil, lot, $50, $20 shipping.
Well, I remember
These prices are all over the place.
You guys remember the Star Trek card game?
Vaguely.
Well, the issue
It's the
was
same thing as Magic, right? Basically.
but with Star Trek theme.
Yeah.
And I bought them to play, and nobody wanted to play because everybody was just trying to collect them. So I'm like, then I guess I'll collect mine too. And it's like, then kids end up stealing your shit, and it's crazy how much shit you buy to collect as a kid ends up getting stolen by some jealous other kid. And then
some of my hockey cards and some of my Magic
oh yeah,
stolen and shit. My Pokemon cards got stolen. Yeah,
video games.
I was unfortunate in that realm.
Video game controllers.
Oh man. By the way, just a quick note: those Magic the Gathering cards on Antiques Roadshow were appraised conservatively between $65,000 and $100,000.
Yes. Yeah,
I'm gonna say if those things aren't being used to like lay down the fury on the battlefield, they're worthless. Like, who cares how much some idiot's willing to pay for them? If they're not being used to play the game, they're not being used. They might as well not exist. Those things are definitely not getting shuffled. I guarantee it. If they're worth $100,000 fucking dollars,
they've just been hanging out in a binder in sleeves, transparent sleeves.
Great. Some wizard out there has a spell book with spells that they've never used. How impressive! Like, seriously, if you're some badass magician wizard and you can throw down in Magic the Gathering, you've got some spells or you got some like thing, some summoning some creature or demon or whatever the fuck kind of deck it is, and you're not using that, it might as well not be there.
I mean, they're in grading packages, and it's like, how can you use it if it's in a fucking
open that shit? Play the damn game.
Then it won't be the same grade. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Bastards. This is why collecting is this weird paradox of like, oh, this card's powerful because or this card's valuable because it's powerful, and then when you put it in a fucking
deck,
then it just takes it out of circulation and it's no longer useful. So yeah, there is a huge paradox of somehow creating value in these playing cards by then putting them on a literal pedestal.
Well, the same goes for a lot of things that are, graded in like poor, fine, very good, mint condition or perfect condition. The same can be said for, watches. The same can be said for anything that is ascribed some sort of desirability and availability.
The actual condition only matters with book value in certain cases where it's because of the content, and the publication run obviously affects the rarity value, but with books specifically, because it's the information and the content that's valuable or that makes the thing valuable, it's like the actual condition is not the biggest factor. It's like, oh, does it have all the pages?
Has it been written all up?
So this is also
maps are graded similarly as well.
Yeah, so that's kind of where it's weird to have this gap where things are valuable because they are preserved, but they were originally valuable because of their use and utility. And then when you preserve them and no longer make it used. It's like, how is that value? This is such a weird spot because this is where all this shit is kind of meaningless. In that,
So there are, I most of us have a vehicle of some sort, and that's worth something. Not so much in that it's a bunch of it represents a bunch of money that's been spent or sunk into something else. In more so in that it can drive you or it can get you from point A to point B, and it allows you to save a lot of time. You can move things around. You can transport objects if you need to. But if it's not running, it doesn't matter.
but it does because you can take that thing apart and sell the pieces.
That's
This is
true,
why,
but only to a point.
like, is not okay. There's real value and then there's perceived value.
Yeah.
A car has real value, and then there's pieces of it that have actual value on their own if you take it apart, which this is where something like the perceived value in, you know, um, a DVD player in your car is higher than the actual value of the DVD player that has been taken out of the box and put in your car.
Yeah.
So there's certain things where the perceived value goes up in certain cases and then the actual value goes down while the perceived value rises. So it's like, if someone wanted to buy a DVD player for their car, they're going to go buy a new one to ensure that there's nothing wrong with it. Whereas the person who's already installed it has a higher perceived value of their DVD player because it's actually in use and installed now instead of just being on a shelf where it has lower utility. And then they think it's more valuable when they try to resell it because it's already installed. Whereas if somebody was actually trying to construct their own, it would be cheaper to do it piecemeal and it would be more to their liking. So there's all these things where actual cost of materials and then the cost of labor versus perceived value, then it's the same thing when you buy a new car. It loses X amount of value as soon as you drive it off the lot because it's no longer a new car. It's like that 10 feet of driving it makes all the difference in perceived value for whatever reason. So again, this is where
when they transfer the title that it really it really diminishes.
Right. Yeah, it really drops.
Speaking of cars, we've got a global supply chain shortage of silicon, of the chips that are used to run all of the subsystems, the critical systems of vehicles now, transmissions, engine, fuel management systems, all of that stuff. And it's interesting because it's all the result of pandemic and isolation and everyone buying electronics up, buying laptops at, clearing out shelves. At one point there was a laptop shortage, a national laptop shortage. It's actually really amusing now that I think about it in those terms. But it's not actually that interesting or amusing because what it means is there's going to be, more economic downturn. There will be people who will be laid off. Plants won't be functioning at full output. They won't need as many people. And this is going to have a broader economic impact at the local level because people aren't going to have as much money. Then there's less spending and less buying, and then less export, less import. It's a vicious cycle, and I don't think this is being talked about enough. I mean, I understand that portions of the supply chain are resolving, but the automotive industry is huge. The automotive industry represents a really significant portion of the economy in terms of providing jobs and all of the economic activity that's downstream from those jobs. I think this is actually something to be fairly concerned about, especially when these companies are buying their like emissions credits from Tesla, which is incidentally one of the reasons Tesla is so profitable.
But they're also not carbon neutral and they're carbon negative. Like,
Yeah,
it's insane how people think Tesla is carbon positive because they have created this green image when it's, you know, what it takes to power the Teslas that are on the road and then build the actual Tesla, vehicles with the lithium extraction process. It's it's insane how destructive Teslas still are. I mean, not to say that it's like not with the intention of being better, but the process is still, it's not as bad, but it's damn near as bad as the shit that's happening with the fossil fuel. So it's really crazy to see that and then have them get this perception of being carbon neutral when really they're even beyond neutral. They're negative.
So, what's I remember reading about one heavy industrial, like earth moving size dump truck that was an electric vehicle, and they were able to, I think it was Hitachi, they were able to reclaim enough energy rolling back down the hill to power like 90% of the uphill climb with a full load. And so they would only have to charge it up overnight, and then they could return to functionality with their moving, heavy earth. But this stuff is like one example out of many examples of gigantic industrial equipment that are all every other machine out there is running off of fossil fuels. So the extraction process is still relying on, you know, diesel. It can't get away from that. Can't get away from the fuel no matter what. And then the processing, a lot of those plants are running off of coal. Maybe they might be running off of nuclear energy, maybe, but it's still probably some fossil fuel. And so it's just shifting attention from where the emissions are coming from at that point. That's the same as shifting blame of fossil fuel consumption at power plants onto cryptocurrency miners.
That's exactly it. And that's kind of where, again, I'm like, it's kind of a sleight of hand, um, designed to make people feel as if they're being more earth friendly. And, all these people out here driving Teslas probably think of themselves as being morally superior to people who drive gas powered vehicles. And, it's not, they don't deserve that smugness, is what it comes down to, because their shit's just as destructive at the end of the day, because they're just moving the destruction out of sight.
So within the next 10 to 15 years, we're going to see a pretty dramatic decline in the production of internal combustion engine vehicles as globally automakers all transition towards the production of electric vehicles. And I wonder what's going to happen to the used car market when that happens, because, people can afford to spend a couple $1,000s on a used vehicle. Some people can afford to spend a little bit more, but there are a lot of people who can't afford to spend 30 to 40, 50, 60, $100,000 on an electric vehicle. And so at some point we're going to get we're going to get a pretty big crunch on used internal combustion vehicles. And then at some point the production of the aftermarket, the parts market that provides all the necessary equipment to repair vehicles, eventually that's going to disappear too. And so I wonder, like, how does this work as we transition to an electric vehicle universe? Because we know the batteries aren't really going to last forever. They have to replace the battery. The batteries are expensive. So when the batteries start to fail and the motors start to fail, because they're going to fail eventually too, and those are expensive. These aren't inexpensive vehicles. How is this? we don't have the. We're gonna have to come up with some kind of mass transit solution for people who can't afford a 40 to 50, $60,000 car.
I mean, you mean like the one that used to exist?
Well, yeah, I mean, the one that's never talked about. The one.
That existed in the late 1800s, early 1900s that was deconstructed basically for a big auto
Yep,
to come in and save the day.
yep. It was almost
Yeah,
all electric too.
you mean like the train line that used to go from Bloomington to Indianapolis?
Yeah,
That the railroads are still there, but they're just dilapidated and unmaintained.
yeah. All that stuff.
Like that type of mass transit system.
Or maybe something more advanced, like what the Chinese have, where they have like
Obviously,
maglev and.
but
I mean,
uh,
imagine if you can get on a train and get to Indianapolis in like 15 minutes.
right, yeah. You know, it has as I've gotten older, it takes longer to get to Indianapolis by car now,
Yeah,
and that's like automobiles are not efficient, and on top of that, we don't need to be driving most of the time. You know, between being able to get groceries delivered and um living in a relatively walkable city, obviously not during winter, um but we don't actually there's weeks where I may drive 10 miles total, and that 10 miles could have been avoided if I took an extra 2 hours on each side of things to walk or whatever. But like I said, obviously in the winter that's not necessarily as feasible all the time, but I've lived in Bloomington without a car during the winter and had to walk. I didn't really have a choice then, so I did it. So again, that's where I'm like, you you don't want people out walking during the winter necessarily. Um, can't walk to work. Like, motherfucker, I used to work at a coffee shop and had to walk to work at 4 o'clock in the morning in the cold. Otherwise, I would be homeless because I didn't fucking have any money.
yeah.
And that's what
Well, that's the thing. Is like there's we've our society has this really strange built-in transportation is a necessity because of the way people are driven to work in a congested, dense population area, but then they want to live away from that. That's why suburbs exist. I think they don't want to live in the city. People don't want to live in the city sometimes, and then you have all these cars that have to get into one place all at the same time, and it's all bottleneck at that point.
and everybody's on the same work schedule.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a when I was in software development, I would at one point I arranged to show up an hour later than everyone, so I could avoid traffic in the morning, basically. And it was really nice. It was like the least stressful few months. And then we moved to a new building, and then they're like, we want you to come in at the same time as everybody. We're trying to do this office thing. It's like, okay, great. Now I get to drive with all of the traffic. And then of course you can always drive in early and avoid the traffic, but yeah,
Traffic is stressful.
traffic sucks. It brings out the worst in people.
And it's all unnecessary.
Yeah.
Traffic is just a byproduct of poor design,
Yeah.
is what it comes down to.
Quick, everybody go take lunch at the same time and swamp all of the restaurants.
Traffic, like human traffic, just like people blocking up restaurants the same way they block up um, highways and main arteries.
The morning and I guess mid afternoon rushes at the coffee shop were oh it's insane because then people because they haven't had their coffee feel entitled to be douchebags to each other and us.
And then
And
it
I was
becomes an excuse.
Yeah.
I was at Starbucks one morning, and there was this guy waiting for his coffee, and he was like banging on the counter
Let me
at the
in.
barista.
Give me my coffee.
He's like, he was literally like slamming his hand down on the counter, demanding his coffee be made more quickly.
And it's really crazy because all these people act like they're in such a hurry to get to their fucking super important location, but they're not in enough a time saving mode to make their own fucking coffee. Like,
or leave the house early enough to get coffee so that they're not in a rush.
It's because they're used to being served by people. They want to get served by somebody.
Serve me
Yep.
my coffee.
it comes down to, yeah, yeah. The whole. It's funny how much the American economy is just working, serving other people to then pay someone else to serve you to appear like you're not a servant. That's like economy.
Well,
God forbid you make your own fucking food.
and somehow there's paperwork involved.
Right. Yeah, there's paperwork at every transaction. The government needs their cut. Like, oh, you got a chicken sandwich? Government gets a cut. You stopped at the gas station? Government gets a cut.
You go to the hospital.
Government gets a big cut. And
They get to cut.
all of them. And, I think it's, oh, you use water? Multiple people getting cuts.
Get out your wallet. Pay up. Unless you're in Texas right now where the people are getting auto billed for like 10 to, I think the high number I saw was $17,000.
Yep.
What?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, this Yamoke thinks he's gonna have heat and light in the middle of the winter. That's gonna be $16,000, sir. Yeah.
That is unbelievable. How are people getting charged for a service they're not receiving?
Texas has their own regulatory commission for energy and utilities. And so they're not held to the same federal standards that other states are. And so they didn't have, they didn't put a jacket around the valves that do the metering. And so valves broke that controlled the mains. And so the mains were left wide open and then they would freeze and they would rupture and then bye-bye water pressure. Like something that occurred to me is that Legionnaire's disease develops in standing water and in pipes. And often when there is like a water break or a mains break around here, we get a boil order or boil notice where it's like, hey, if you turn your water on and you've got weird pressure, if it spurts, boil your water for a while until the boil order is over. And it's usually like 4 to 8 hours or something, 12 hours. But it means that that water's been standing and has a chance to develop like bacterial colonies or cultures, and that shit'll fuck you up. And so there was an extended period of time where their whole system was messed up. And some of it wasn't frozen. Like they don't have potable water in Texas, in portions of Texas. And, like there's imagery of people collecting snow and putting it in their bathtubs so it'll melt so they can put that into their toilets so the toilets will flush. Then that also makes me wonder, is like, what if their sewer system is broken and now they're just flushing shit into the surrounding environment? This is bad. Texas has a really old infrastructure, and they're like proud of not of regulating themselves. And 10 years ago, when there was a blizzard and all the shit broke and everything failed and people were dying because it was too cold, like they had a warning and they didn't follow the advice to update their infrastructure or invest in the kind of technology. A fucking jacket. It's literally like what you or I would wear to go outside, like a parka. They make parkas for these things, and they didn't buy them. They could have bought a parka. Didn't buy enough jackets. Didn't think it would happen again. Fucking morons, assholes. So there's a kid who died. Like his parents like watched him die, and they're suing ERCOT, I think is what it's called. whatever the Energy Commission in Texas. They're suing them for $100 million. I don't think it'll be the last lawsuit because,
Oh no. Oh god. There's gonna be people that go to jail over this.
oh yeah,
Gonna be at least 30 people that probably go to jail. At least.
I mean, it's unbelievable to think that the most energy-rich state couldn't keep the fucking power on. Like they were negligent and failed to update their systems to the point that people have died, and there's been like near catastrophic damage to their infrastructure. I read an analysis that said that Texas is going to spend the next 10 years fixing their infrastructure from this one event.
Bro, it's not over because this week it's gonna get warm and then all this shit's gonna melt and it's probably gonna rain.
Oh, then we're going to get more polar vortex.
They're gonna flood.
Oh shit.
Yeah, they're about to have floods. A lot of the pipes burst. I saw it was some like I want to say like 150 million gallons of water, something stupid, was lost from pipes being burst
Holy shit.
last week. So then this coming week, when everything starts running again and they don't have time to fix everything, there's going to be so much water damage and flooding
Oh my god.
that happens from just shit, the infrastructure being broken, that it's like the real damage is almost yet to come, honestly, with their infrastructure. So much shit is about to get fucked up this coming week. And let me be clear. This year is gonna seem super fucked up because we are in the middle of a pandemic. And I don't know if y'all realize this is a cicada year.
Oh god.
So it's gonna look like we're having
End times biblical shit's happening.
but it's beyond biblical
Yeah.
again. This again, everything it's gonna like we've already had more people die from COVID than like probably died in all of the Bible. You know what I mean? Like realistically, more people have died from that one disease than instances of death that we see in the actual Bible. Maybe like since Sodom or what's it called? Sodom and Gomorrah got wiped out, right? So maybe those cities
Well,
probably put it on par.
618,000 people died during the Civil War, and that is considered to be by far the greatest toll of any war in American history. And that's a New York Times. That's from a search for Civil War death count, and that comes from the New York Times. From
They're talking about Americans because the Iraqi
yeah,
estimates are way higher than that. So I don't know. It's weird when they talk about that shit because then it's like they don't count non-Americans as like people. That shit gets super weird.
yeah. And so when I go to Wikipedia, let's see.
Or I mean, come on, the fucking Native American genocide. You telling me? Come on, man. This is where
the Three Kingdoms War of China during 184 to 280 AD looks like 36 to 40 million.
Well, I'm talking about American murder specifically because again, this is where they're like, oh, the most is 600,000. I'm like, are you guys only talking about white people? I'm fairly positive there was way more Native Americans killed than that by Americans. I'm fairly positive because the estimates are often conflicting, but the estimates are still like 100 times higher than, or I guess, what I get, 10 times higher, at least 10 times higher, and yeah, so that's where it gets super weird when non-white, non-American, or potentially American indigenous populations or other people who may in fact be American but just not white don't get counted in those numbers. I'm pretty sure they killed more slaves than that. It's like, come on.
looks like the United States killed 12 million indigenous people between 1492
Yeah,
and
that's
1900.
up at the higher end of what I saw
Yeah.
because it's between 6 and 12 is what I was thinking off the top of my head. So yeah, so fuck all their Civil War bullshit numbers. Fuck that.
Well, 510,000 is close to the Civil War number. That's the only reason I mentioned it.
And a lot of them motherfuckers they're talking about were pro-slavery fucks, so fuck them anyway.
Yeah, the 258,000 Southerners. Well, there are probably some Northerners who were pro-slavery. They were just too far north.
A lot of them were. A lot of them had slaves. So yeah, it's like America likes to pat itself on the back for these pseudo woke periods where like, oh yeah, we freed the slaves. No, the fuck you didn't.
They just disagreed about how to organize the slaves.
There's documented slaves up to the 90s, like the 1990s. I don't mean the 1890s. I mean the 1990s. People don't talk about that shit because it's embarrassing as fuck.
That's right. Mississippi was like the last state to ratify the abolition of slavery, and it was in the 90s.
I'm talking about people still doing it, even though it was illegal. There are documented cases of families who kept slaves continuously from the fucking Civil War times up until like 1992 or some shit. And then again, it's like people want to just act like that shit didn't happen and be like, oh yeah, we fucking ended slavery in 1868 or whatever the fuck. No, the fuck you guys didn't. No, the fuck you didn't. And then, like I said, they want to pat themselves on the back, make movies about Abraham Lincoln and put this dude on a fucking statue. Man, it's so crazy how like much the American culture destroys people's histories and then tries to build false narratives to then make those people thank America for protecting its histories from America. Fuck all that. And that's where again I'm like it's insane to have the notion of that 600,000 people in the Civil War, most of them fucking pro-slavery motherfuckers being the most people lost from American military endeavors. Fuck all that bullshit propaganda narrative. That's such propaganda right there, man. It's so crazy.
Yeah, there's a legacy in the town that I live in of slave ownership among the major landowners who incorporated and founded the town. There are even maps in the local library that show the property lines of the slave owners, and there's been a renewed push over the past couple of years to bring more of that to the fore. There was even a statue of Abraham Lincoln standing over a kneeling freed slave in downtown Boston that was recently taken down.
So I was today years old when I learned that in 1959, slavery, serfdom, and unfair taxes were abolished in Tibet by the Chinese.
It's like less than a century ago.
I'm still trying to process this a little bit. In Tibet, up until 1959, slavery, serfdom, and unfair taxes. Well, I'm just going to leave the unfair taxes act 'cause that's like pretty consistent with a lot of places. But slavery and serfdom had to be abolished by the Chinese. Chinese are saying, Tibet, you can't have slaves or serfs. Why don't we know about this? Why isn't this like part of the dialogue?
I mean, but how realistic is that when the Chinese to this day still have like slave conditions?
Well, that's true.
You know, so again, it's like there's all this shit. It's like, yeah, they abolished slavery, just redefining it in the process.
Well, that's what America does, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So that's where again, when all these people talk like they abolished slavery, Like, no, they just redefined it and fucking moved it out of sight, out of sight, out of mind, and then pat ourselves on the back. uh, yeah, so I've had to, well, because then,
Holy shit. Okay. What I said about Mississippi was in 1995, but they failed to notify the U.S. archivist. So it wasn't until 2013
yeah,
that it was finally ratified by the state of Mississippi to abolish slavery. You know, what? That's like, where's the fucking Oliver Stone movie about that?
yeah, man. Because then that's when, you hear people say it, but it's like a lot of people don't want to accept that even like white liberals care more about dogs than they do about black people. Like, that's the hard truth that still nobody wants to accept that shit. And it's like, you know, anybody who wants to debate me on that point, you can kiss my ass. Like, it's not even worth my time because I know it's true. And the problem is, too many white people who want to think of themselves as progressive will try to debate that point with a black person, not realizing like the inherent proving my point that they will do. And that's where I'm like, it's crazy when you get Joe Biden talking about black people not getting the fucking vaccine because we don't know how to use computers and shit like that. Where
Wait,
it,
what?
oh, of course, man,
Holy shit, did he say that?
in so many words. And this is where, again, there's definitely a white savior complex happening among white liberals that it's I saw that shit with Obama, because basically white liberals want to act like they gave us Obama as like a present. Like, here you go. Now racism's over. And they were the first motherfuckers that wanted to act like racism's over because Obama is there. And it's like, yeah, of course Republicans did that shit too, but the liberals were some of the worst offenders when it came to just pretending racism's over because Obama's there. And that's where when I
Holy
started
shit. So he
it,
said, not everybody in the community, in the Hispanic and the African American community, particularly in rural areas that are distant and or inner city districts, know how to get online to determine how to get in line for that COVID vaccination at the Walgreens or at the particular store. That's an issue of distribution of technology. That has nothing to do with ethnicity or any of. Oh my god.
and it's an issue of design. It's poor design. The same reason, our taxes are so fucking obtuse. It's poor design. They're meant to be. It's not meant to be easy for poor people to figure that shit out. It's why they use double speak and all this shit when they're saying, "Oh, um, fill out section 12, but if you're this, don't fill out section 12, but fill out section 12A." And it's like, well, do I fill out section 12 or 12A? And they'll make all this like confusing shit for people who need things to then put them in a situation where when they fill it out the first time, they can say, "Oh, you didn't fill out this form right. So, yeah, you don't get your unemployment the first time. You got to go fill it out. Oh, the second time, I'm sorry, you missed this form again. This part is really clear. Just do this thing. And then the third time you may get it, but you may get rejected again." So, there's all these things about making processes obtuse and difficult to then reject people for in a mis uh, filling out something incorrectly. And this is across all these different programs meant to give aid to disenfranchised and poor people. It's like they're all super difficult to get um, through the actual initial process. Like, oh, you need money to survive. Write this 50,000 word essay on why you need this money.
That shit's hard to follow.
Yeah.
What did Yasi say?
She said she has a PhD and that shit is hard to follow. And, you know, it's
Yasi is no slouch. I just want to make that really clear. Like, straight up.
Yeah, it's so intentionally obtuse that, you know, this is why some people still haven't gotten their first fucking stimulus checks because they didn't perform correctly or didn't have a residence to which the check could be sent or a bank account. So those people never got a stimulus check. Still never got a stimulus check.
That's like a failure of proportions.
There was some stimulus checks going out of cards, so that was happening. But this is where again, the people that would need that the most, who don't have a residence or who don't have a fucking bank account, where are you gonna get that card at? How are you gonna figure out where to get that card? Oh yeah, that money is then set aside for that person, and they never fucking get it, so it just sits there. And then you got these people wandering around on the street, fucking in the middle of the winter with no money, no shelter, no fucking bank account. And then they have $600 that's been sitting there for a fucking year that's set aside for them that they can't get because our government's a bunch of old people who don't know what the fuck they're doing, who don't know how much anything costs, who think, oh, $1,400 can get you your bills paid for 6 months. Shut the fuck up, Joe Biden. I'm so tired of these people already. I am so tired of Joe Biden already. This motherfucker has not done anything. We are in the middle of a second crisis. Fucking, he didn't solve the pandemic. He ordered a bunch of fucking vaccines, but guess what? They haven't gotten distributed yet, so we can't say, oh, we're through this crisis. And then we get a fucking snowstorm, and this motherfucker is not doing anything. He's not doing anything.
Man,
this is insane to me that this guy is supposed to be a president. He is not doing anything.
H5N8 avian flu is been reported in Russia.
What's happening?
H5N8 bird flu, avian flu.
I saw that.
It's reemerged in Russia, and so of course authorities are saying there's no evidence that of transmission between humans. You know.
No, they said it was to humans.
And I saw a reporting where they're saying there wasn't. I'm assuming that if they're announcing bird flu right now, that it's fucking dangerous.
No, that's why they announced it. I thought is because they recorded a transmission to a human.
Okay, then I must have read something before that. Then the last that I'd read, the spin was it's okay. There are people who are testing positive for bird flu, but it's not transmissible. But if it's they wouldn't be announcing it if it wasn't going to be a problem.
Yeah, it was 5 hours ago.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen that yet. No, that's the thing. There's another bird flu, and if anyone remembers what happened with avian flu, it was nasty. People got sick. People died, and it was fast enough that it just kind of killed people and went away. But everyone did have to take precautions. Everyone was washing their hands. Some people were actually wearing masks, but it wasn't quite as publicized as with COVID, where it's like, wear the fucking mask.
I'm sorry, it was 18 hours ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, we've got COVID, we've got avian flu round, whatever this is. Like, it's interesting. It's definitely getting interesting.
Yeah, it's really crazy that, like, with all this shit happening, who's trying to start another fucking war? Like, you know what I mean? Why would we have any inclination in 2021 for anyone to think they have the resources to fight a war. So I'm like, if it takes a fucking pandemic to end wars, okay, that's fine. I'll take it. But what possibly could possess anyone to start a war in 2021? And this is where, and I'm like, it's gonna happen, of course, because we have a bunch of dudes running these fucking governments. So I'm like, of course it's gonna happen. I'm not ignorant.
And supply
But
chain failure and other complexities of resource management.
yeah,
We weren't able to resolve like fighting over oil or water without a pandemic, and a pandemic isn't going to make it easier to resolve issues of maintaining clean water supplies, and assuming that fossil fuels will continue to be the main source of energy for most people. Although I do have some hope that thorium reactors will start to pop up because smaller and more distributed energy generation sources are a good thing. And those things create water and carbon. And so we have examples of technology that'll work. We just won't use them. It's like maddening. I understand why it's. I mean, I'm reluctant to adopt an electric vehicle because I understand the complexities of the manufacturing process and what it does to the environment. And at this point, it's still not enough. We can make more cars that run on internal combustion that produce less damage to the environment in the short term while we figure out this battery and energy storage issue. There's got to be a better battery than lithium that requires, digging up a city worth of the earth and then processing the shit out of it. Strip mining doesn't have to happen. There's got to be a better way. It probably costs more, but those costs are those are all just baked into the economic system itself. Wasn't there a big breakthrough in photovoltaic arrays where they had they had a compound that they used that was able to make them like positive efficiency, like 100 over 100% efficiency.
yeah. I feel like I don't know if it was at the same time, but there's also like I think it's nickel and um, aluminum with like water produce energy. So there's like some, you know, there's a way to produce energy from water in tandem with these other elements. And that was what, I think it was at Purdue or something that they were able to turn it into
Aluminum water energy systems for autonomous undersea vehicles.
yeah, they turned it into an engine and got like a proof of concept to actually be able to say, oh yeah, because then they built one like a Lamborghini, I think.
It produces
Oh,
hydrogen.
right. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, they built a Lamborghini with that proof of concept engine.
I mean, if you can power a Lamborghini with it,
Right.
is there anything? I mean, really, I mean, a Lamborghini is a pretty tall expectation.
Um,
When I was younger, I remember reading about harvesting solar energy with satellite-based collectors and then beaming it to the Earth with microwaves. And I always thought, wouldn't that cook the Earth? But the more I think about that kind of thing, why aren't we collecting energy from space? Why are we forcing that energy to fight through our atmosphere?
I mean, technically we are. Again, it's like just the way that it's like the catching photons on a solar panel is the same thing, except
Yeah.
it's just a different method. So I think that's where the idea of going outside of our atmosphere to get a more concentrated solar ray to then transmit it through our atmosphere,
You
it's
still
sort
have
of
to transmit it through the atmosphere.
exactly. So the idea is that it's going to be able to then be more efficient if you can concentrate it, but you still have to get it through the atmosphere, which degrades it. So there's all these things about
A giant cable running from a satellite down to the Earth. A bunch of tethered balls swinging it.
Yeah. which that's what the space elevator is
Yeah.
basically meant to be. And that's kind of, that's not another concept that has not gone uncreated. So again, there's all these things that well, okay, let me rephrase that. They have theorized space elevators, but they haven't actually successfully executed one in real life.
Yeah.
So there's been like attempts, but it didn't succeed. I think Japan tried a few, but they didn't pull it off.
I always
but it's-
imagine like a giant ring structure, like a gigantic ring structure, and multiple space elevators. I guess that's a gargantuan construction project that's probably beyond our means at the moment.
Right. I mean, you'd have to be able to park in the Lagrangian points to be able to build it, which is not. I mean, the space station kind of
Well, it's at one of the Lagrange points.
right, but you'd have to have all of the materials then up there, so it becomes this thing of how do we get the materials and the
How do we stabilize it all in the right location and get it all together so that it doesn't fall out of its own orbit?
science fiction makes it seem way easier than it actually is, and
We need Magneto, basically.
right, or the or the shield, like what is it? The hover ships.
Hover ships. Well, they're gonna. I think I read something about the mandate of sword being changed for the Phase 4 for Marvel.
Right.
So,
Yeah, because focusing on weapons now
yeah.
instead of other worlds.
So maybe Disney Marvel will give us a space elevator, and they'll show us how to do it.
I mean, there's concepts.
No, I know, but like in a movie, like it'll get enough exposure that people will start trying to imagine it and spur the creative engine of our society.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the problem is when we have these things, the government just wants to use them for military industrial, and that's where again you have floating labs already, which is kind of we don't really know about them because they're covert, but they 100% exist.
I mean,
But the way
didn't China just announce that they're going to have a research station in space, like a one that
I'm not talking about in space, I'm talking about on Earth.
oh
I'm talking like there's floating labs that are constantly in the air, one way or another. Like they may touch down ever so often, but they're mostly in the air. Those things already exist on this planet, but we don't know about them because they're meant to be covert.
Yeah.
Like it's not some like study otherworldly shit, but they're probably spying, on somebody. Most of the time. And that's kind of where, again, these things already exist, but the way that they present them in media is meant to make them fantastic in our minds, but also associate them with things that then make it seem like they're not going to turn them and use them against us the way they already are. And that's kind of where, again, it's the same shit. Like, do you remember the Batman movie? The Nolan one when he used all the satellites to get echolocation vision.
Oh yeah, he turned on all like every camera, and
you think the government can't do that?
I'm sure they already can.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. If they put that shit in a movie like that, the technology was probably already available to our government.
They in the what's his name? Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie, Snowden movie. in his Snowden movie, they talk about the government spy operation, how it enabled them to turn on any camera anywhere, access all the systems, and then how he created some like backup routine, subroutine that was just collecting all the data and filing it away.
I mean, and here's the thing: you wouldn't, with the proper algorithm, you don't need a camera because all you need to do is check the intersection of the Wi-Fi signals to map out the interiors of anything. Like you can use intersecting signals to triangulate objects in with which they're intersecting. So this is where that whole like the idea that they put that shit in the Batman film is where I'm like, oh, the government must have figured. I mean, it's not the government. The government must have hired scientists who figured that shit out
Yeah,
like 10 years prior to that, and that's how
maybe more.
somebody who's writing a film can imagine that shit because they probably worked for NSA and saw that shit somewhere and then went on to work in Hollywood as a consultant or some shit like that, because that's what they do is they hire, you know, people who've worked in those industries as consultants. Like the Bond films, yeah, they hire, you know, as high level access someone as they can get to consult, and then that person can't give protocol to a certain point to then compromise the actual
They can make
like
sure that the language sounds realistic.
exactly, but they'll modify it so they don't actually compromise protocol, and that's why they hire the consultants, so then the shit doesn't accidentally compromise protocol because they don't want that shit either. Because no, check it. I don't know if you remember this. Mythbusters, they did a show and the FBI stopped them from fucking airing it because they didn't want them to accidentally let people on how to create an explosive.
Yeah.
So the FBI came in and was like, you can't air this. You can air a modified version, but you cannot air this like this recipe because then people will know how to make a fucking explosive. Stepped in on the goddamn Mythbuster. It was either FBI or
they can catch the Mythbusters making a bomb on television, but they can't catch some idiot in his shack making a bomb.
I mean, they can if they want to.
They
That's the whole point.
So they don't want to.
Want to? Yeah. This is where again, this is how you know sometimes when they're trying to let people do shit. In the same way with fucking January 6th, yeah, they were letting them do that. Yeah. They were monitoring these people. They let them, and then we find out, oh yeah, because there's former FBI in the fucking insurrection. So yeah, they knew what was happening. They just let them do it. Down to we have footage of the fucking cops just letting them in the Capitol building. Yeah. You know, so there's times when we question whether the government let something happen and they knew about it, but we 100% know they knew about it and just let it fucking occur because they could have clamped down and found all the Airbnb rentals and been like, oh, this Airbnb rental, we're going to go fucking check up on this person, see what they're doing. Oh, they're trying to insurrect tomorrow? Either make them leave town, or if they don't say they're going to leave town, put them in a holding cell. Same thing. Every fucking, you know, they could do that sweep. They put Boston on lockdown when that bombing happened.
I mean, I was just thinking about that. They could have locked DC down the moment that it all happened.
Exactly. Boston got locked down fucking immediately. That shit was locked down immediately. Yeah. So you're telling me the goddamn Capitol can't get locked down like that? Bullshit.
I feel like the Capitol should only have like 8 points of access. Anything beyond that's unnecessary.
It's not even, I don't even think it's 8 points. I think it's more like 3, maybe 4. Because I think one of, you know, that's where the bridge comes in. Like actual access by road. I don't. Because then if you're not from there, it's not easy to get around. I've driven in DC. It's not easy to navigate if you're not from around there because you can't see any landmarks.
See, this is a terrible map.
It's like super difficult to navigate around there, in fact.
Let's see. I mean, just the Capitol Yeah, it seems like there's quite a bit of access. There's a bunch of roads going around, but they're all. What the fuck? Why is DC so messed up looking? It's got roads going in really weird angles.
That's what I'm saying, man. It's like the elevation changes a lot. So the way it seems on a 2D map is going to be distorted.
So there are a number of highways, but it's surrounded by a ring of 495, Interstate 495, and it looks like there are some interstates that go. Nope, only 270 seems to go like connect to it.
That's where yeah, it's like
66.
you can't when you're there because of the way the interstate works, you can't really get into it. It's like there's only a couple of points, and that's why the traffic gets backed up.
Okay, so there are one, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 bridges on the river. There's like 12 bridges on the river. Those could all be closed off fairly easily. And then every other road around it looks like there's no reason that the National Guard couldn't have sealed off the capital, other than like a lack of effort by the then administration.
Yeah, because they pretty much did during the Black Lives Matter shit.
Yep. Yeah.
So again, this is where, yeah, it's 100% obvious when they don't do something that they could have done, and they knew that they could have done something, which is why you get these bullshit calls for some sort of commission. But they're not gonna do anything. Fucking Nancy Pelosi isn't gonna do anything. This whole Man, I'm so tired of all these goddamn old people in Congress. I'm so tired of old people in Congress. I can't reiterate enough how tired I am of old people, because they're not interested in doing anything. All they ever do is grandstand. All they ever do is point blame at each other, and then try to just use it as a way to get reelected. And they don't ever fucking do anything. Just like right now, fucking Joe Biden is not doing anything. It's crazy that Coke and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have done more than Joe Biden towards Texas.
Yeah, she raised like $1 million or something like that in a matter of hours or something dumb. She did more.
He's going down this week, I think. Which, man, it's so weird to watch people.
$4 million.
Yeah.
As of 18 hours ago.
But it's so weird to watch people who think of themselves as like being on the left just give Joe Biden a pass on being such a horrible leader right now. He is being a horrible fuck. He's not being a leader right now. And I think it's just laughable that people on the left, quote unquote, are not pissed off. And it's crazy that those people are laughing at the notion of Republicans dying in Texas as if it's not gerrymandered and just actually a ton of black people there whose votes didn't count, and make it seem like it's all Republican. Same thing, there's a huge black population in those southern states. And to see people almost happy that shit is happening because people are gonna die. That's and they're like thinking they're Republicans dying. It's like that those people are now no better. They lose all their fucking moral. Like, I don't think they had a huge moral high ground in the first place. They lost all their goddamn moral high ground when they're out here celebrating actual people dying that are not horrible human beings. Republicans in Texas, you may dislike them, you may disagree with their perspectives. They're not actual slave owners right now. They don't actually own people. So I'm not going to wish those people death. I'll wish a slave owner death. Fuck a slave owner. But these aren't actual, these are people who have horrible, horrible views. Wishing them death makes you a horrible person. That makes you a horrible person. And it is like to see all these people pretending like, oh, it's okay because they're Republican. A lot of them aren't. A lot of them actually aren't. And just because they're Republican, that's not okay to wish them death. If Republicans wish somebody else death, like there's a lot of Republicans who be like, oh, I wish death upon trans people or gay people or whatever. Turning around and wishing them death, that's no better. It's no better. So I think it's really insane, and it's just gross to see all these people who think themselves to be progressive just like laughing at actual death. Like there's actual people dying, and it's like, okay, this is the one time you want to put aside your political differences and be like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm sorry we don't agree on everything, but here's some help. Not like, oh, look at all these people. This is what you get for not believing in fucking government aid. That's a douchebag fucking response. That's a douchebag response. And on top of that, to not use this as a teaching moment to be like, hey, I know you don't believe in government aid, but this is why we need that shit. And then give them aid and then be like, oh, damn, I almost died. You helped me out of this situation. This is an actual good reason we need government aid. But instead, turning around and gloating that they are reaping what they sowed. That's fuck. That's not empathy. That's not empathy.
Yeah, haha. You need
Oh,
haha. You got saved by socialism. Isn't gonna help, right? That's what I'm getting out of this completely. Sure, it's socialism. They probably recognize that it's socialism. They probably don't like that it's socialism, but they do.
I mean,
I'm sure they appreciate the help.
yeah. And it's like, obviously, if you're pro socialism, this is a big W for your like ideological perspective. Just take it in silence. That's how you gracefully win something. You don't gloat in people's faces. Oh yeah, I'm gonna teabag you because I fucking was right.
Yeah, you're supposed to gloat in private. Seriously.
Exactly. You have a circle of friends, laugh about socialism and how much better it is than capitalism, and go about your business. Don't tweet about it for fuck's sake. Damn it, people! Really? It's so uncouth and gross to see people like tweeting about the suffering that's happening in real time as if anybody deserves that shit. And it's like, man, people, wokeness is obviously hollow in what it means when you're expressing it publicly. It's just a display, and any sort of actual enlightenment is internal. But all these people virtue signaling and then doing the most tone deaf virtue signaling by gloating about people suffering and actual people dying is the weirdest shit to see in 2021. Because I'm like, is this your Democratic Party? Is this your left wing? This is this your empathy, people? Because that's gross as fuck to me. It's super gross, and that's what I'm like. I am wagging my finger at that. I'm wagging my finger. I'm chastised. Like I will personally chastise somebody and scold them for their behavior if I knew that they were doing that shit. Just because their parents clearly never did that shit, and they don't know how to fucking act.
I wonder how many people are awake but still haven't gotten out of bed. Because it's possible to wake up and just lay there all day I think that's what a lot of doom scrolling involves, is just laying around in bed and engaging the internet. At a point,
But that's philosophical masturbation. That's not actual enlightenment. That's what I mean.
I know
Like
that's
people
what I'm getting at, is that,
want to pretend they're woke,
but they haven't
but
got out
they
of bed yet.
engage in philosophical masturbation constantly. And then it's this element of, you know, it's the same shit with oh my god, I saw an article. Do you know what simping means?
Yeah,
So I saw an article talking about how somebody being mean to this person's kid because he's being too nice to women, and they were talking about how her kid's getting called a simp at school,
yeah.
and she thinks it's absurd that her chivalrous son can ever be, be made fun of for being too nice to women. And I'm like, first off, this woman is part of the problem because she's misrepresenting what simping is, and then perpetuating her son's poor behavior as if women, because the example they gave in the article is like, oh, if you have $1,000, you spend all of it to impress a woman. That's fucking dumb. That's fucking stupid. If you have $1,000 in your possession, that's all you have, and you spend all of it to impress somebody, you're a fucking idiot, and you're a goddamn simp. That's not chivalry. That's not something we should like aspire to be. That's fucking so stupid. And the idea of CNN trying to then take black culture and then redefine it so then white people are not offended when they hear the word and realize what it means, to then try to redefine it and be like, simping is actually good. You should be a simp. It's okay to be a simp. Like,
my understanding of it is that a simp is the person who was simped, and the person who did the simping is leaving somebody hanging or stringing somebody along. And a simp is somebody, there is a corollary to simpleton, but they just don't get it. I mean, obviously there's more to it, but yeah,
I mean,
I thought that the attempt to connect it to chivalry was a real stretch. And I'm pretty used to watching shark jumping events, but it just didn't seem disingenuous.
is ignoring signals, and they continue to pursue someone and will spend they will spend all of their money to
Yeah.
try to impress someone in light of the fact that this person has expressed that they're not interested. That's why it's simping.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna pour money because I'm gonna win you over one day. I'm gonna stand out in your fucking yard and I'm gonna play this stupid ass boombox
In the
and I'm
rain.
pain, and you're gonna be convinced because I'm gonna look so fucking pathetic and I'm gonna look such like a puppy dog that you'll eventually have sex with me. And that's what is in their fucking head, and they will act like that's chivalry when it's the exact opposite. It's basically wearing people down into fucking you. And that's where it's like the exact opposite of chivalry. But then they want to make CNN articles about, oh, my kid's being picked on because he's too nice to women. Like, no, this kid's trying to fucking friend zone his way into fucking these girls. Well, probably not fucking because he's so young. Eventually, that's what it's gonna be, because that's what that behavior breeds. It's like, yeah, if this kid's doing this shit when he's 8, he's gonna fucking do this shit when he's 20, and then he's gonna try to pretend he's being nice to girls just to try to fuck them. That's not noble. That's not chivalrous, and it's fucking gross. And then that's where
then they cast the person who's telling him to stop as a bully.
Right, exactly. Then they're trying to make it as if the boy is the sympathetic one, when in reality this boy is predating on women by or girls at this point, by fucking pretending to be nice to them, when in reality he's just doing it to try to fucking gain a fake sense of being close to then establish a romantic relationship. And this is where it's like, then you see, like, it's not something that only dudes do, because then women will train their sons to do this shit too, and then like make it worse, because then they turn around like, well, this is how a woman should be treated. And it's like, no, that's turning the whole process into a commerce exchange, and then the woman's a piece of property to be like awarded at the end of this process. You have to spend so much money or go through so many dates or go through so much work, and finally you get the reward at the end of the process. And that's where this woman making it out as if her son being too nice to girls isn't actually him just trying to like convince somebody who's not interested into being interested, which is super fucked up. That's like a form of manipulative social engineering where it's like, if you can't connect with conversation, buying people shit, giving them like gifts, trying to convince them like, hey, just pay attention to me. Give me some attention. And you can't get them to get your attention, and you will not stop trying to get them to give you attention. That's an obsessive line of turning someone into a possession that turns into domestic abuse. It turns into these dudes then thinking these women are property, that then if the women try to leave them, oh no, you can never leave me. I've gone through all this shit. We have built this stuff. I built this stuff. And it turns into this like, it starts at age 8, but by the time it's manifested into a grown adult, that kid never sees a woman as an autonomous human being or an agent of her own like relationships. And it's always how much work he put into getting her. That's why she can never leave him. And then he ends up doing some crazy shit. And it's like these little kids get trained to do that shit. And then their moms fucking go to CNN and try to make it seem like their kid's getting bullied because he won't fucking leave the girls alone. This kid won't leave the girls alone. So his mom goes to CNN.
His mom took it to CNN and became the Uber bully.
You know? That's exactly.
Like,
and
Mom that made that happen in the first place.
yeah, it's the whole reason the mom needed to go to CNN is because the mom told the kid like, "Oh, you want the girls to like you? Give all the girls a Valentine. You want the girls to like you? Give all the girls a rose. Give all the girls a candy." And he won't fucking leave the little girls alone. So they started calling him a simp because he won't fucking stop doing too much to try to get the girls' attention. And now they fucking are all annoyed by him. And the mom wants everybody to stop being mean to him instead of telling the fucking little kids to leave the girls alone. They're in school to fucking learn. They're not there to fucking be your girlfriend. Leave them alone.
he's 8. Why does he need a girlfriend?
Go through then, going to school, constantly being harassed and feeling like you have to like give back to this guy that's giving you shit you never asked for.
Yeah. And again, then this is where now because the mom is a woman and she's the one putting it forth, it's like all those other girls lose their agency in the process. The mom has removed all the other girls' agency. So then it's the boys choosing. The boy, as long as he's nice to them, they have a responsibility. One of them has to choose him back because he was nice to them. And that's exactly what the article is basically saying. And it's really crazy. Again,
Oh, wow.
the girls have to deal with that shit. The girls have to deal with these boys fucking constantly. The girls are just at school. They're just at school existing. And this little boy won't fucking stop giving you shit. He won't stop giving you fucking roses or candy. Oh, you want my lunch? No, I don't want your fucking lunch, you little shit. Stop telling your mom that I didn't take your lunch, and stop trying to make me out to be the bully because I called you a fucking simp for not leaving me alone at lunch. And then the girl's now a bully. Now the girl's a bully because this little boy fucking goes home and cries to his mom because he can't fucking get a girlfriend by buying her.
She won't eat my lunch.
Yes, man. It's absolute craziness.
Oh, that's so fucked up.
Yeah. So
Somehow this is an encouraged behavior, right?
oh yeah, definitely.
And so this is encouraged
For the boys. For the boy.
the boys. This is encouraged, and girls are encouraged to not dress however they please.
Creatively.
And then
They can't dress comfortably. They
but-
have to dress to avert the male gaze.
but they can't enforce masks. And
Right. Yes. We've been dealing with the no skirts above 3 inches above the knee rule for fucking years now. But these motherfuckers want to act like masks are a big deal. Like girls have had to wear long ass skirts because of creepy ass teachers. Like, is what it comes down to. Or the fact that boys can't pay attention if the girls next to them skirt's too short. They can't pay attention to their fucking work. And we don't address that. We don't say, hey, you need to learn to control your fucking impulses. And if you're in a class, if a naked woman walks in, you should still be able to do your shit. Like, what about these people who draw the art, the naked form? They're not sitting there fucking, oh my God, I can't control myself. I can't draw this shit. Let me go have sex right now because there's a naked person. No, that'd be fucking absurd. So why don't we hold boys to the fucking same standard instead of being like, oh, girls, you can't wear skirts too short. Like, no, this is how we end up with boys who have no feeling to control their impulses because society will then tell the girl to do things to make the boy's impulse go away instead of telling the boy to control the impulse. Oh, constantly, starting from age 8. I mean, earlier even.
Well, it's they try to control the behavior as soon as it's revealed that they've got a dirty uncle who won't stop looking at them. They've got to cover them up. They've got to start being careful about their daughters as soon as they go someplace and, you know, there's somebody out there. They got to worry. I mean, I guess my deceased uncle who once declared that if he saw a man follow a young girl into a restroom, well, he'd go give them a piece of his mind. You know, that kind of shit's like, there's just a lot of displaced aggression about all of this. It's not the fault of the girl. It's the fault of the pervy dude, or pervy woman. There might be a pervy woman out there who's into that kind of shit. I mean, we see it all the time where there's some teacher who slept with like 4 of her students. That does happen. I read about that at least once a year, which is fuck. I didn't read about this last year. Like, not once, actually. That's actually really cool. Like, the first year, as long as I can remember, where I didn't read about some teacher having sex with her students. Or I didn't read about some gym coach knocking up one of the cheerleaders.
Right, you can't get pregnant on Skype or Zoom. Yeah.
Most awkward OnlyFans ever. Oh, God. Ugh. Yeah, I feel like I have to wash my hands after thinking that.
Well, and in that, there was no school shootings for that, most of that duration. And then almost immediately upon large crowds starting to gather again, shootings, there was one yesterday, I think.
Yeah, at a gun shop in Louisiana.
Yeah, at a gun shop.
Ironically.
I laughed. Yeah, I did. Okay, that was douchey of me. But I'm not like gonna gloat about it. Like when I read it, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I fucking laughed. I did.
I when I saw it
on Twitter and tweet about it.
I didn't really say anything about it. No, when I saw that, I thought like, oh, a gunfight at a gun shop. How novel! Like, of all places for a gunfight to erupt.
I'm not even gonna say what I actually thought. I'm just admitting that I laughed because it would be douchey of me to act like I didn't laugh when that shit happened. Like, or when I read it. No, I had a pretty good laugh. Yeah.
It sucks, but
yeah, I kept it. It was in my house. I didn't put that shit on fucking Twitter.
Yeah.
I didn't go make a witty tweet about it. Oh, I'm not gonna even venture to that realm because that's a slippery slope. But when you start trying to be witty too soon, that makes you the asshole. And I think people have a hard time knowing when shit's too soon. It's like, yeah, it's still too 11 jokes. Like still, I think. But South Park didn't think so. And it's like, sometimes maybe the punchline is worth it. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But again, this is where it's like, yeah, don't joke about slavery with a black person. You might get punched in your shit. Like straight up. It's like even black people who didn't go through slavery. Like you don't joke around about slavery with black people like in a flippant way. Like, yeah, you might trigger a person into just snapping and punching you in the face, and they're like, "Oh, I wasn't planning on punching somebody in the face today. This motherfucker said something about slavery, and like, it just happened." And it's like, not to say that black people can't control our, reactions, but again, people will say shit to you where you're like, "Oh, I didn't even know what happened. It was just like a natural response to punch him in his fucking face, like, because the people get so entitled, like." I remember very specifically this dude used the N word and made a reference to my mom in the same sentence. And I fucking snapped. It was like during a football game. So again, it's like, people talk shit to try to like get on, get under your skin when they're playing sports. But it's like there's a certain point where you like, oh shit, I didn't realize I crossed the line. I may die. Like, and this dude crossed that line where I'm like, oh, I don't even give a fuck about this game anymore. Like, if you die in the next 5 seconds, that's on you, bro. You said the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm like, because I've been in that spot and I know that it's like, well, yeah, guess what? There are a billion and one things you could say to insult me, and I will not even react. But apparently, this dude said the one combination of things where I'm like, oh, I don't care. I don't care. I'm fucking you up. So there is this thing where I know instinctively that people can push buttons that they can't unpush, and they don't realize that, like, oh shit, I shouldn't have pushed this button. I don't know what's about to happen next. So at the same time, like when people feel too comfortable because society has like made them feel comfortable with saying those things, they'll like say those things to like 1,000 people, and then they'll get to the wrong person and say that thing, and then all of a sudden you have a fucking gunshot where 3 people just got killed. Like that's how a lot of that shit happens, where somebody's like never been punched in the face and they say some shit to the wrong person, and then all of a sudden that person is laying on the ground knocked out, and it's like, oh shit. Like, you know what I mean? Because like I've definitely done that to people where again it's like you're in the spot where you, like I said, you don't know, you can figure out your buttons when people push them, but until somebody actually pushes your button that pushes you beyond that point, you don't know what it is. And that's why when people try to act like they'll never do some shit, I'm like, you're a fucking clown. You've never lived enough to know what you'll do, because there's some shit where you don't know what you'll do because you've never been there before, and all of a sudden this is a completely new situation to you, everybody else around you, and the entire world, like to a certain degree, where it's like, again, there are times, like I said, where I've been in situations where I've like lost my shit and done things where I would never expect myself to like pick a person up off the ground and like slam him on the ground. But oh yeah, you talk about my mom and my heritage, I guess I'll do that, apparently. Like, and like maybe not one on their own, because I've had that happen. I've had one on their own. Obviously, a lot of kids go through shit where they're getting made fun of, like, oh, mama jokes were a whole thing. Like, there was never one mama joke where I reacted like that, where people were like joking about it. But like I said, you talk about my heritage and my mom in the same sentence, apparently you unlocked the wrong
Yeah.
fucking code.
You know, you just reminded me. You reminded me of this. It was like a party that Tabby and Lori had, where I was hanging out like across
was
the
there.
way at the neighbor's place, and some
Yep.
crazy shit went down. And I mean, I was in their apartment, and the guy like grabbed a bat and ran out. Like there was like some people got into it somehow. And I remember like at that point it was just like I got to find everyone and we got to get the fuck out of here because I'm pretty sure the police are going to show up. And the guy the guy who grabbed the bat, I ran into him on the balcony and he's like, man, you better get the fuck out of here. It's about to get real. And then he like charged into a group of people with a bat. And it's what the fuck is going on? And so the next day when I showed up to see what the damage was, like the whole balcony had dropped like 6 or 7, 8, because there was like a crowd of people stampeding out.
That shit got chaotic so fast.
Yeah.
It was like 0 to 150 in like 2 seconds.
Yeah. I remember the next day when I was there, I was walking around the parking lot and, you know, every other car had a dent in one of the doors because people were like trying to get out and trying to turn out of the parking space before they were out of the parking space. And they would just like slam their nose into somebody else's car.
Yeah.
It was so fucked up. It was like, that's the kind of madness that gets unleashed when somebody gets triggered like that. And they're, you know, nobody knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It was actually quite terrifying.
It is. And that's where people be like, oh, I train and all this shit. I've trained in martial arts for a very long time. And there's situations where I'm like, we're getting the fuck out of here. Because you can't just like lopsal your way out of some shit. Like if somebody pulls out a fucking sledgehammer and you don't have a gun, you get the fuck out of there. I don't care how much martial arts you fucking know. If you're smart and somebody pulls out a fucking hammer, you get the fuck out. You don't sit there and try to fight that motherfucker with the goddamn hammer and you have no weapon. That's just dumb. That's just dumb to try to, I'm going to prove my arts today. Like, no, you prove yourself and get the fuck out.
You'd think that somebody who had spent a lot of time studying martial arts would be like, not the right time or the right place. Get safe, protect myself, protect my friends, but get out. Right? I mean,
Exactly. And that's where, again, I'm like, you were there at that party where that dude just had a bat and started hitting people. Where, again, it's like, no, you don't try to, if you don't have a fucking gun or another bat or something longer than a bat, you don't take on somebody swinging a fucking bat unless you want to get hit.
I felt like I was really lucky that they recognized me and told me to get out instead of swinging at me. That was my like, I don't need to stick around moment.
Yeah,
You know?
I have no idea what even started that.
Yeah.
Like, but you know, obviously that is what ended it, and that's kind of where, you know, it's one of those situations where you never know when somebody has nothing to lose, how they're going to go into a situation where, again, it's like, I don't think anybody that night thought that evening was going to end with somebody grabbing a bat and just starting to swing on people.
Yeah.
Oh, that, you know, there's been a time I was at it was a hip hop Congress rap battle.
Hip Hop Congress. Yeah. I remember that stuff.
I forget the dude's name. The dude said something in a rap. And he was like, he was really making this dude look stupid. He was really making this dude look dumb. I don't remember what he said, but I just remember in the process, the whole sequence unfolded like a fucking movie. Cause that's where I was like, I was watching the dude get pissed while he's getting just ate up in the rap. And I'm like, man, this dude's like, he's like really mad. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like maybe 20 feet away. And because it's like, it's over at Collins. It's on the steps of Collins. I'll never forget this shit because it happened like 20 feet in front of me. And that's where, again, people want to act like I'll do this and that. When shit happens in real time, it happens so fast. You have no idea like what's actually about to happen next. So like this dude is like in the middle of his rap, and finally he must have said something that's just over the line in this dude's mind. Dude fucking pulls out a knife, and everybody's like, "Oh!" And we're like, is this real? Like, is he serious right now, or is this just him being like, "Oh, you crossed the line, I'll cut you." Dude starts swinging the knife, where I'm like, "Oh shit, this dude just pulled a knife," but you only realize it after he starts swinging. Like,
Yeah.
in real time, you don't know what's happening. Like, if somebody pulls out a knife and starts swinging, they've already swung it like 3 times before you realize what's even happening. Having been there, having been in a situation where somebody just pulls out a knife and starts swinging it, they get in a couple swings, and the only reason nobody got hurt is because he just started swinging it like instinctively. It was like I said, and I like the way I saw it happen is how I know. Sometimes you'll just, because I saw it build up and I saw him get pushed over the threshold of not being able to control his emotions, where it like all happened right in front of my eyes in real time, as to where I'm like, oh my God, this dude just had his feelings hurt so bad that he wanted to stab somebody, to the point where he tried to stab somebody. And the only reason he didn't is because I think the dude, I know who stopped him, but the dude who was rapping had the wherewithal to grab an empty pitcher and fucking knock the knife out of his hand. So that's where I'm like, and watching it play out, I'm like, oh, this dude knew he was like antagonizing this guy past this point, but he kept doing it anyway. And that's where I was like, people, when they do rap battles, they don't realize like how close a lot of times they get to actual violence. Because I've seen multiple. There was a time in Indianapolis when I was watching a rap battle in somebody's garage. Dude lost his shit, just punched the other guy and fucking knocked him out. And that's when I'm like, that shit happens a lot, just because people get in their feelings and then something gets said where it's like, oh, you've crossed the point of no return, and this dude's about to like just emotionally, because never a woman, it's always a dude, but this dude's just about to emotionally like let off on everybody, and hopefully somebody can stop him, but otherwise people are about to get hurt. And it's like, having seen that shit multiple times in person.
Well, Megan Thee Stallion shot her shot herself in the foot while arguing with her fiance because he was giving attention to another woman, right?
No, he shot her.
He shot her in the foot. Okay.
Yeah.
Because they were arguing, because he was paying attention to somebody else. Okay.
And she's bigger than him, and he said he felt threatened, which is obviously bullshit.
He had a gun. What?
Exactly.
That whole situation seemed really absurd to me too.
That dude's such a clown. He's such a fucking clown.
He didn't know how he was going to react.
All right. Yeah.
He got pushed to a place and he pulled a gun out and shot her in the foot, in the pinky toe, I think, right? Something like that.
Well, he's referencing fucking what was it? Harlem Shuffle.
Well, there's that gunshot. There's that scene in "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker" when the guys.
But that's also reference. I can't think of the name of the movie. It's not Hell Up in Harlem.
Oh, the one that "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker" is referencing. I see.
Yeah, it's fuck, Eddie Murphy, I think, and Richard Pryor. Is it Harlem Nights?
Harlem Nights.
Yeah, Harlem Nights is an amazing movie. Yeah, that's the one.
Also, go check out "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker."
Yeah, both of those are fucking amazing movies as far as like comedy. But yeah, it's crazy how much I'm gonna get you sucker. Like a lot of that shit wouldn't be allowed today.
Exceptional Radio.
Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5 Radio Callisti